Hello everybody, I hope you're well. I'm Callum, I run Repair Wins and I'm all about reuse. And with that in mind, I've bought this very old halogen lamp. Now, whoever bought it new paid a fiver. I didn't even pay £5 for it. I paid £3. That's right, I picked it up second hand at a charity shop. The box is really tatty because it's clearly been in someone's garage for a while. And the way that I know that is they bought it at Woolworths because it came with the original receipt. Woolworths went bust years ago, and not only that, they bought it in the shopping centre that I used to frequent when I was younger. So in case you thought I was lying, there's your date, the 12th of April 2008, and they paid a fiver for this security light. So £5 in 2008 money is obviously a lot more than £3 in 2026 money, so I have had a really good deal here. But I thought, instead of this thing going in the bin, why don't I try and modify it, and instead of using an R7S halogen lamp, I want to use pretty much a modern LED bulb that's going to use, you know, 1/100th of the power, maybe 5 watts. But I don't think this thing was ever used. You know, the lamp is in its original box, and this thing is practically immaculate. The only problem is I took it out of the packaging, and this back cover fell straight off. I've already removed the screws, but all the posts they're supposed to screw to are completely broken. So chances are it was bought, it was taken out of the box, the person realised it was broken, they never got back to Woolworths to return it. 18 years later it ended up in the charity shop. But that's alright, I've bought it and I am going to try and fix it. So I think the premise is that I need to install some mains cable here. We've got to take this apart and remove this halogen bulb and then put a modern LED bulb in here. And then I want to get this thing mounted above my desk, and then that way I can use it as an extra light to get rid of this sort of, you see this sort of circle that we have here where it's a bit brighter? I want to try and get rid of that, make the videos look a little bit better. So I suppose my first port of call is just to remove this lamp from the box and then install it in the holder, and we can see if this thing works. Right then, in order to gain access, all I've got to do is take this one screw out. And then I think the front should roll forwards. Yep, so the front's come off. I'm just going to place it. Oh, it actually kind of hinges. Right, you know, and I'm just going to try and sort of do this without taking the front cover off. Maybe I'll just let that fold back down. I'm going to take the lamp out of its little container. Yeah, I don't think that's ever been used. They don't want you to actually touch the lamp with your bare hands, so I'm just going to take it out and grab it by the white bit. But yeah, 500 watt lamp. There's obviously a slim chance this goes bang the moment I plug it in, but I think I'll be okay. Anyway then, all I'm going to do is I'm going to open the front. I'm going to try and line this up as best as I can. Maybe twist it around slightly. This obviously isn't the highest quality, probably hence the reason why it was sold half price. But as long as I can get it installed, I don't mind. Right, there you go. I think that is now sat down on the contact pads. Yeah, if I wiggle that back and forth, that's springing around. So all I've got to do is sort of line this back up, slide it closed. I can put the screw in, and then I can wire up a mains wire and we can give it a quick test. I've got some of the finest quality 3 amp cable here, but this is 500 watts, which isn't even 2 amps, so this should be plenty. I'm just going to strip the insulation back on this. I guess I'll turn this around so it's facing forwards. The wire has to get pushed through here. This cord relief will hold it in place. And then once it's pushed through, I can pretty much just strip it back, terminate it inside the terminals, and that'll be that. There we go then, this is wired up. You can see live earth and then neutral, because that's the order that it wanted me to do it in. I'm going to set it down on the desk like this, and obviously my hands are going to be out of the way for when I actually test it. I've set all of these just to their maximum amount. So the maximum amount of lux, which is just a measurement of light. The maximum amount of time, I don't need to tell you what the word time measures. And then the maximum amount of sensitivity, because the idea is, if this is a work light and I'm going to be using it for editing, I think when this is at the maximum level it stays on for 8 minutes. I'm obviously going to be moving around and constantly going over the sensor and tripping it way more than once every 8 minutes. So in effect it should just be switched on forever. Anyway then, it's now sat down on my desk. I'm just going to plug it in and we'll see if we have light. Oh, wow. Yep, that works fine. And also, flip me, not only is it bright, but it is cooking. It is so warm. I could probably... Well, that's... You can't hold your hands even that close. It just burns. I mean, look at this. That is... You know, that's bright. If I was to drop that onto there, I bet you it would catch fire. This thing is clearly working. There's no way... There's no possible way I could use it for recording. But I reckon with a standard LED bulb in there, we'll absolutely be away. I don't know if this little box that controls the time and the light and the sensitivity and stuff is broken, because no amount of messing with the dials gets it to change. It just seems to be switched on permanently, which is ironically exactly the behaviour that I want. So I'm just gonna, because for example, if I mess around with the lux, you can see it gets no brighter and no dimmer, even with a full rotation. So I'm just gonna leave it whacked all the way around to full blast. I'm going to leave the time whacked all the way around to full blast, and I suppose I'll just whack the sensitivity all the way around as well. But this should actually be a little bit easier than I anticipated. Pretty much, I just need to buy an R7S bulb, and the way that I know that is it's what's written on the box. So you can just buy an LED equivalent R7S, 118mm, and then that's it. Fit the new bulb, find a way to mount this thing to my desk, and I'm away. I think the simplest way to close this thing up is just to use super glue. Now obviously super glue makes it so that I can't really take it apart again, but there's not any reason that I should need to, because at the end of the day, this wire is terminated into here, this lamp is going to get plugged in somewhere and then it's just going to stay there. I mean, I'm going to screw it down to something so it's never going to move. So I can't see a reason why I would need to open it up. It was only £3 and I'm sure worst case, I could put a little chisel in there and break it, or I could use a Dremel to cut it free and then just glue it down a second time. So what I'm going to do is open up this super glue, I'm going to get a bit nearer to it, and I'm basically just going to run a bead along the top if I'm able to. Right, so I've just gotten rid of all that excess, and now I can basically go along the top. I'm hoping there's enough left in this tube, but if not, I'll just go and grab another tube. I've got a few minutes. Now this is mains voltage that's in here, so I think super glue is actually quite a good choice, because if I was to use T7000 or B7000 or something similar, there's a slim chance that if I were to drop it whilst it was powered up or whatever, that the back cover could come off. But I don't think that, you know, this super glue is going to go anywhere fast. Wonderful. All I need to do now is just close this up and then set the cover down in place. It doesn't go like this, it goes the other way around. Set the cover down on the top, give it a squeeze, make sure it's pressed into place. I might even throw 2 clamps around it, but otherwise I'm just going to leave that for the rest of the day, and then when I come back it'll be sorted. It's been a few days, so the glue has dried. Obviously you can see this isn't going to go anywhere, that's really nice. And then what's even better, if I just sort of spin this around, is that the replacement LED has arrived. So obviously it's the same size, but you can see in there just about the little sort of squares that make up all the LEDs. Right then, the screws are removed, so I'm just going to use some tissue, same way as I did last time, to remove this bulb. Right, there we are, that's free. I'll go and find a place to put it. Brilliant, so that's out of the way, and now we can get the new one installed. Right, there we go, I think that's more like it. So I'm going to try and plug it in now, and we'll just see if it comes to life. Well, it works, but I've put a foam block over the top because there's a small issue. So if you're sensitive to strobing lights or flashing lights, then this is the moment you look away, because when I remove this, it's going to be very obvious what the problem is. Right, so the refresh rate, or the frame rate of the camera, isn't the same as the flickering here, because I'm in the UK, so it's 230 volts at 50 Hz, but I record at 60 FPS, meaning you get that flicker. Either way though, it does work, and to the naked eye it obviously looks really good, and it makes the place look a lot brighter, so it's just something I'm going to have to work around. The plan then is to mount the camera right here. There's 3 holes on the back of here, and I've got 3 slightly overkill bolts. So I've already checked. This fits in here nicely. And then the one in the middle needs a washer, and then the final one also fits nicely. So the plan is pretty much just to hold this up here, transfer 3 marks over, use a drill, put some holes in there, screw it on. The lamp is now in place. It looks decent and it's hanging exactly where I want it to. You can see it's suspended nicely above the desk. Anyway then, I was about to start using this thing when I realised the cable's just a bit shorter than I need it to be. If I'm going to run it neatly, so it isn't hanging straight over the desk like this and getting in the way of every video, it's got to be longer. So I was like, right, I'll just cut the end off and make it a bit longer. But the only spare wire that I have is obviously, because I'm me, from a scrap microwave, at least the only spare wire that I'm willing to sacrifice. I've snipped the end off of here, as you can see, and I've got this. This needs to be stripped back, not a million miles, but I'm going to sort of do it by eyeball, strip maybe this much, and then try and do the same for the next piece. The next step, by the way, is just to make sure all of these are exactly the same length. When you strip back the wire, it ends up pulling on the insulation on the inside. And what happens is you get the copper sometimes sunk back 0.5 millimeter or 1 millimeter from where the sleeve ends. So pretty much if you just cut the excess off by sort of 0.5 millimeter or 1 millimeter, you'll get rid of that problem. And then I'm going to get my wire strippers. I'm going to move them all the way back to the start and just leave sort of a 0.5 millimeter gap. And when I've done that, I can then strip these 3 back. The 3 wires are stripped back, and I've done the same to the other end. So now I've got these nice high-end wire crimpers, and I've got these sort of butt splice connectors. The idea is I'm going to splice this onto here and then splice the other end onto the other wire. So it takes a bit of force to compress it, but you can see that the copper is all the way at the end and it's on the inside. It's pressed against the little lip, but it's gone no further. And it's compressed the sleeve as well as compressing the copper. So that makes a really, really sturdy connection. And I'll just crimp the others on. And what I'm going to do is make sure that these things are all facing the same way. Because if this one's at this angle and that one's at that angle, then they don't want to sort of sit flat. You want to make sure the 3 of them, as best as you can, are facing exactly the same way. So I'll put that on there. Once again, just hold with my finger. Brilliant, that's that one done. I'm done then. Here's the end result. So you can see we've got the blue at the top, the brown at the bottom, and then the earth beneath, because the wires are oriented the same way. These things aren't absolutely perfect, but what's important is that the copper is all the way inside the connector, and all of them are nice, strong, solid crimps. So now what I can do is just slide the heat shrink up. So I'm going to slide the first piece, the bigger piece, and I'm going to make sure it just goes ever so slightly over the middle. So it takes a minute to get it over all 3 of the butt connectors, but there we are. So that's just a bit over the middle. I'm going to use my hot air station to heat that up, 250 degrees, maximum level of airflow. We're going to set this piece down. I'm going to slide the other piece up, put it a bit over the top, set it down, and then, you know, do the rest. The theory is, by the way, that the new light is going to get rid of all these shadows. I'm happy with that. You can see the splice has been made. Obviously, there's no reason at all why it wouldn't work, but I will just quickly plug it in and give it a test. And as promised, it switches on and works okay. I've done a quick job of routing the cable, as you can see. So it runs up here, zip tied into there, comes all the way along to there, and I've just zip tied it behind, sort of on the washer. Alright then, I've installed the switch. It's very loud, by the way, but here it is in action. And then obviously it takes a moment, but the thing turns on. Flick the switch again, off it turns. So I'm happy with that. And then I realised that the light coming out of this lamp here is much nicer sort of to look at. It doesn't strain your eyes as much. And I think the reason for that is that it's diffused, whereas obviously it's just a plain piece of glass there. So what I did was I used loads of this sort of matte tape. It's exactly the same tape that I've put on my multimeter, if I just bring it over here, that makes it, basically it doesn't reflect anymore when you're trying to look at it. So I've put a layer of matte tape on the inside, and then also a layer of matte tape on the outside, so that now, when I switch it on, the light coming out of it is much, much smoother. And it actually has the added bonus that that rolling sort of effect that you get happens far less often. There you have it then, that just about concludes this video. I hope you found it useful. If you did, then feel free to leave a like. Even better if you hit subscribe. The more likes a video gets, the more views, the more views, the more subscribers, the further we spread the repair message. More devices get fixed, more people save money, everybody wins, you know, what's not to like. This didn't go quite as well as I wanted it to. I was obviously hoping that I could have the light switched on pretty much 24/7 when I'm actually doing stuff in here, and that it would just dump loads of light into the room, loads of light onto the desk. It would make filming easier, it would make everything look better, and so on. But the reality is that's not the case. So this tape has actually gone a long way to help. It was the rolling effect was really quite bad before, but now that I've put the tape on, the rolling effect is nowhere near as pronounced. It doesn't happen as often when it does happen. Which means obviously the light has a lot more utility to me. I mean, for the £8 that I've paid for the lamp and the LED, You know, I don't count the cost of the tape because I bought this for an unrelated project and, you know, I've already used it. I don't count the cost of the switch either because it was in my drawer for years. But seriously, for the £8 that I've paid, it's certainly not bad. It's going to make taking photos for product listings easier. The odd thumbnail is going to be easier. And if I've got a subject like this small little board and I just want to zoom in on it really far, I've got plenty of light that's going to be getting onto the subject, thus the videos are going to look better. So I can't use it absolutely everywhere, but you know, I am still going to get use out of it. A charity's made some money and we've kept something out of landfill. I suppose they're the important things really. Anyway then, I hope to see you in the next video. You know, I think that's just about it from me. So I'll close by saying take care, goodbye for now. Enjoy the rest of your day.